YouTube's mission is to give everyone a voice and show them the world. If you're looking for ways to make your content more inclusive and appeal to a broader audience, then you are watching the right video. We're going to cover tips on how your YouTube channel can foster greater inclusion and show you how your channel can be a force for good.
Give everyone a voice, you say. Foster inclusion, you say. Well, in the interests of openness, YouTube, let's see if you're holding up your end of the bargain, shall we? Because from where I'm sitting, that ain't the case. And from where a lot of other content creators are sitting, it's not the case either, as you can see when you look at the comment section of your own video talking about inclusiveness and openness and giving everyone a fair shake. Now, this is something that's been going on for a long time, but one of the big things that really brought YouTube's lack of transparency to the surface was the so-called adpocalypse. This began in 2017 when YouTube said that they were going to start cracking down on so-called extremist content. This was paired with a large number of advertisers withdrawing from the platform. The earliest inklings were towards the end of 2016 when YouTube began to dramatically shift their focus towards so-called family-friendly content. This of course put a lot of channels which weren't so-called family-friendly into a bit of a precarious position. From this point onwards, things only got worse. Consistent messages that kept cropping up in the YouTube creator blog across 2017 and 2018 was also regarding tightening and enforcing policies. This added another vague and unclear layer of hoops that YouTubers would have to jump through in order to ensure that their content was in compliance. Throughout 2017 and 2018, there were several high-profile incidents that happened on YouTube. These incidents somewhat put YouTube into a bit of a bad light, or a perceived bad light with the public and with large advertisers. The first big one of which was PewDiePie in early 2017. He came under fire for supposed anti-Semitic comments and hate speech, with his now infamous video in which he gets two Indian men to hold up a sign saying, "Death to all Jews." This was of course compounded when later on it was discovered that he let slip the word nigger while playing a game. And these stories were of course blown to hell and back by every single one of the glorified bloggers that call themselves journalists these days. In the same year, 2017, it was uncovered by H3H3 Productions that YouTube advertisements were far more likely to go to traditional television-based channels rather than user-generated ones. Keep that in mind, I'm not done with it yet. The beginning of 2018 saw a massive tightening of the YouTube Partner Program, restricting the Partner Program to channels with more than 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours per year. This of course caused massive uproar in the community from smaller creators who had previously met the criteria and now did not meet the new one. This change in essence completely hamstringed their efforts when it came to being content creators on the platform, and was basically nothing more than a colossal rug being pulled out from under their feet. Also in the beginning of 2018 there was another high-profile YouTube faux pas committed by Logan Paul. This is of course the incident in which he filmed a hanged corpse that he found in Japan's infamous suicide forest, and uploaded his reaction to it on YouTube. There was another so-called adpocalypse shortly thereafter. This was around February 2018, when it was uncovered that there was a lot of questionable content involving minors on YouTube. Certain strange videos involving children. This situation was, of course, swiftly quashed, and even more strict rules were put in place regarding featuring children or underage people in videos. And there was, of course, the Voxpocalypse. This happened in May 2019 when a reporter, Carlos Maza, had an internet spat with online talk show host Steven Crowder. June 2019 introduced even more strict terms of use for YouTube, tightening monetization policies even further and stripping monetization from hundreds of accounts, as well as terminating others. During this time, it was noted that this demonetizing, unpersoning of channels disproportionately affected conservative voices here on YouTube. Some state that this is YouTube instituting an anti-conservative bias, while others believe that it's corporations like Vox wanting to stamp out competition. And keep that bit in mind, because I'm not done with that yet either. There was another very high-profile event that happened in 2018, and this one is another quite big pin on the board suggesting YouTube's anti-conservative bias, and this was the deplatforming of Alex Jones, which happened not only on YouTube, but on several other platforms as well, all around the same time, which some have pointed out is incredibly suspicious, and almost as if these Silicon Valley tech giants have some sort of behind-the-scenes collusion. This was of course compounded further by several Project Veritas leaks, which indicated that there were employees at Google and YouTube who would amend, alter, or otherwise bias search terms to prevent what they called the next Trump situation. There are also Project Veritas leaks looking at Google's so-called ML fairness, which stands for machine learning fairness, which is how they algorithmically serve up content with regards to certain search terms, and also how search terms autocomplete when put into Google or YouTube, such as the phrase "men can," Google auto-completing to "men can have babies" and "men can get pregnant." And the hilarious one on YouTube, "I'm sex," not auto-completing to the nearly 700 million view music video Sexy and I Know It, but instead to "I'm sexist and I know it." At this point in the video, I would normally continue on with the script that I've written. However, in the time since I wrote the script and have been editing this video, several new data points have come out, so we're going to have to look at those now as well. In recent times in the United States, there has been a bit of a to-do regarding Ukraine and its relationship to Donald Trump. And some of this is being mentioned in regards to supposed impeachment proceedings. You are free to think on this issue whatever it is that you want to. I'm not here to comment on those proceedings one way or another. However, as part of the evidence being submitted for this, there was a whistleblower. And I have to only refer to this person as a whistleblower because Facebook and YouTube have actively taken steps to ban people who mention the name of this person, even though this person's name has been made public on several news sites. And it gets a little bit worse, because YouTube has not only privated videos which mention this person's name, they have struck channels which mentioned the name, and they have sent emails to the people who own those channels which don't actually say what it was that that person did wrong. Because, of course, mentioning someone's name when that person's name is publicly available in the news is not a bannable offense on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube banning channels for seemingly random and arbitrary reasons, YouTuber Markiplier had hundreds of members of his audience banned because they apparently used the YouTube chat. The long and short of it is, he asked his audience for live responses. The responses came in the form of a small picture image, an emoticon or emoji, and YouTube deemed this to be spam and struck down hundreds of accounts. For more information on this, you can see Markiplier's video, YouTube Has a Problem. And then there's the curious case of Ivan. Ivan's channel was dedicated to various pieces of media, including the Star Wars franchise. He was one of the numerous people around the world who enjoys making fan edits of certain pieces of media. He received an email from YouTube informing him that he was no longer the owner of his channel, and his channel was subsequently deleted. This was despite the fact that there were no copyright issues launched against his channel. It was simply there one day and gone the next. 35,000 subscribers, 2 years of time, hundreds of hours of work, poofed out of existence with a snap of YouTube's fingers. This has led some to hypothesize that this unpersoning was because of a so-called anti-Star Wars opinion. If you are a fan of Star Wars or even vaguely follow the news around it, you're probably familiar with this sentiment. Disney's handling of the franchise is seen as incredibly divisive, with many fans not liking their films, especially The Last Jedi, and some people pretending to like it. And of course, the people who dislike Disney's handling of the franchise are labelled all of the typical snarl words: sexist, racist, blah blah blah. This ties into the treatment that audiences have been receiving from other so-called progressive-leaning entertainment franchises, such as the all-female Ghostbusters Current Year Edition, Terminator Dark Fate, Captain Marvel, newer episodes of Doctor Who and Star Trek Discovery, and the new Batwoman series. All things which have been openly touted as very progressive-leaning. If not by people who actually created these things, then very heavily by progressive-leaning news outlets. And so now any criticism of these franchises is met with allegations of sexism, racism, misogyny, or just general hatred. This narrative has become so strong that it's very easy to see why certain companies may actually be banning people who express dislike for these properties. Because as soon as disliking something is deemed as an act of hate, well, that's all the justification platforms like YouTube need. Then there's the curious case of Coppa, or Coppa, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Coppa is a child protective initiative that will basically ensure that in a worst case scenario, 90% of ad revenue on YouTube will go away. And if YouTube and its bots decide that your content or channel is made for children, they will ban you as appropriate. Or just kill all of the advertising on your channel altogether. How YouTube defines content which is made for children is incredibly vague, but includes things such as, does it make use of any sort of cartoon, or does it have any sort of child-friendly imagery? What's the language that you use in your video? Is it very simplistic? Well, that might be made for children then. On top of all of that, if you are found to be in violation of Coppa by doing things like not properly labelling your content, the FTC will fine you $42,000. To which I somewhat have to say, good luck enforcing that outside the US, but I also have to point out that this is a great way of scaring people away from creating any sort of content on YouTube. At this point in time, we all know that this will not be applied evenly. Also, making YouTube child-friendly seems somewhat moot when you consider that there is already a YouTube Kids that you can find at youtube.com/kids. This is the YouTube app made for children. Why all of this child protection is being ported over to YouTube proper is anyone's guess, especially considering that in order to create a YouTube account, you have to confirm that you are over the age of 13. If people are lying about their age, I fail to see how that is the responsibility of content creators on the website. My guess for the reason for this is that it is just another tool that YouTube will use to kill off content creators that they don't like. The biggest contradiction is, of course, YouTube wants ad-friendly content, aka suitable for kids. But one of the rules regarding Coppa states that if you make content for children, or if their bot declares that your content is for children, then you can't have ads, can't have super chats, the whole 9 yards. YouTube just needs to state its intent clearly. No money for anyone. All ads on content are just to make money for YouTube or Google. More interestingly, is adding to all of this information is the recently changed YouTube TOS, which states unambiguously that they will remove channels which they deem to be not commercially viable. Now, YouTube have attempted to clarify this statement and say that they are actually talking about features on YouTube, not removing users who don't make money. However, I would suggest to YouTube that they look long and hard at why everyone, and I do mean everyone, for I have yet to meet a single person that didn't read this sentiment into this sentence, why did everyone automatically default to the presumption that YouTube was going to purge them and their accounts? The reason is that this is the state that YouTube is in. Loyalty to the platform is at an all-time low and getting worse because YouTube has purged accounts that they don't like for completely vague and nebulous reasons. One of my favourites and example to this was the case of Mr. Metica, who owns a YouTube channel that was completely demonetized for the crime of, in YouTube's own words, uploading material that wasn't his. This was despite the fact that at the time this message was sent, his channel contained zero content. Not unlisted content or privated videos, there was actually nothing there. And yet YouTube just decided that all of the monetization on this channel with zero content needed to go away entirely. And the real kicker is, since monetization has been removed from that channel, all the money which is in the AdSense account associated with that channel will not be paid to Metica. Instead, that remaining balance will remain in one of Google's bank accounts, making them interest. In other words, YouTube Google, when they remove monetization completely from channels, has in essence stolen money from content creators by having rules in their TOS that state, we can't give you any money if monetization isn't enabled, even if there is still money in your AdSense account. So what exactly is the long and short when it comes to YouTube giving content creators advice for complying with Coppa?
We'll use machine learning systems to help us find content that is clearly made for kids. But don't rely on our systems to set content for you. Like all automated systems, it's not perfect. But we want to help you follow the law as much as we can. Check out our help center and talk to a lawyer if you're still unsure whether or not your content should be marked as made for kids. Be sure to consult a lawyer if you have questions.
Yeah, cause when I shoot a funny video of my cat playing with a piece of string, I want to go and have a detailed consultation with my lawyer before I decide to share it with people on a platform whose slogan is broadcast yourself. Speaking of broadcasting yourself, I think it's time we looked at some data. This is the traffic source chart for the entire lifetime of my YouTube channel, from the date of its inception to the date that this video is being made. And you can pretty obviously see the effect of the various apocalypse events that happened in 2018. This was of course the time period where YouTube really started restricting content that they found objectionable, and of course objectionable content that has no adverts on it is less likely to be served to people because it makes YouTube less money in doing so. But of course, the idea that YouTube actively throttles channels that they don't like is just a conspiracy theorist for racist, sexist, right-wing conspiracy theorists. Which is why when you look at just the suggested videos category, those are videos that appear alongside other videos when you're on a watch page, that's why whenever YouTube talks about restricting content that they find objectionable, you know, keeping down those bad faith actors, there's always a massive decline in traffic when they say they're going to start doing that. And of course 2019 was when YouTube was caught saying, outright, we're going to start throttling channels to try to avoid another Trump situation. Which basically means anyone who is in the so-called alternative influencer category, or anything even vaguely related to that, has had most of their traffic completely obliterated. If we switch the analytics over to the browse feature, that is how people find your content either via your YouTube homepage or via searching in the search bar, we see the exact same pattern. Now I know what the inevitable response to this is going to be, but Teal Deer, your content sucks, just make better stuff and more people will watch it. Well, Mr. Angry Strawman, let me introduce you to YouTube's P-scores and video throttling. This was a very extensive expose done on YouTube's code, and it was discovered that every video that gets put up on this platform is assigned a P-score, and the P-score is based on 5 variables: popularity, passion, protection, platform, and production. Popularity is very self-explanatory, it's how many people watch the content. Passion is basically audience interaction. Protection is basically how advertiser-friendly your content is. Platform is your content suitable for larger screens? and production, which focuses on higher quality editing, camera footage, and all sorts of other fancy things like that. All around, there was a golden formula that was worked out. That was 10-minute plus videos with 45% plus viewer retention per video, a highly driven fan base that shares your content, likes your videos, and all of that good stuff, little to no swearing or sexual content, so it's very family friendly, content that can be watched on all sorts of devices, and content that focuses on good production values and being of high quality. This would give your videos a higher P-score than other users. P-scores work with other variables to basically give you a grade on YouTube. The higher your P-score, the more YouTube likes you. The lower, the worse off you are in YouTube's books. And you can be sure that you will be rewarded or punished as appropriate. Which leads us neatly on to YouTube's code for throttling channels. Yes, this was code which existed on YouTube. It has since been removed by Google after it was exposed with this document. That, however, does not mean that this is still not happening. This is a colossal smoking gun. It is basically objectively provable that YouTube has some sort of system to de-rank and throttle content. Combine this information with YouTube's video rating categories, and you have a recipe for YouTube being able to more or less completely unperson your channel and make sure that your videos do not get served to people if they decide that you are problematic. And this amuses me so much, because in YouTube's August content creator blog, the YouTube team wrote, "Problematic content represents a fraction of 1% of the content on YouTube, and we're constantly working to reduce this even further." This very small amount has a hugely outsized impact, both in the potential harm of other users as well as the loss of faith in the open model that has enabled the rise of the creative community. One assumption we've heard is that we hesitate to take action on problematic content because it benefits our business. This is simply not true. In fact, the cost of not taking sufficient action over the long term results in lack of trust from our users, advertisers, and you, our creators. We want to earn that trust. And what a surprise, looking at my analytics from July 2019 to August and beyond 2019, there's another big drop-off. Gosh, I just love being able to objectively show that I am part of that fraction of 1% that YouTube considers to be problematic. And guess who it is that YouTube objectively prefers having on their platform via the P-score system? Well, the answer is exactly what you would expect. All the mainstream media big hitters, all of the progressive late-night talk show hosts, and all of their super famous people like Will Smith that YouTube are actively paying to use their platform. The only controversial things which might be there are things like Fox News or PewDiePie, but they are simply in a position where they are ultimately too big to be ignored. So, does all of this objectively measurable information put together indicate a bias on YouTube's part? I would suggest that yes, it does. There is a distinct overrepresentation of far-left progressive outlets on YouTube's preferred list, and with the history of throttling, demonetization, deplatforming, unpersoning, whatever you want to call it, hitting mostly people on the political right, but occasionally catching people in the centre, seemingly in the crossfire, and with leaked audio from people who work at Google and YouTube saying that this is what they are doing, I think it's abundantly clear that Google and YouTube have a bias. The state of play is clear. YouTube is creating a walled garden for big hitters that is basically mainstream media only. Big celebrities only. No little people. Nothing edgy, and a vague and totally Orwellian terms of service that might as well read, "We can terminate you at any time for any reason, and there's nothing you can do about it." YouTube is now ThemTube.